Welcome to Mystara, where we're taking a good, long, hard look at one of the most powerful creatures in the multiverse, the Ardry of the She-Court, the King of the Archfey, the Tsar of the Bizarre, that hypnotic, chaotic King Oberon. He represents the goodly folk in Mystara, and serves as a foil to the immortals, Ixion in particular, and he makes it his life's mission to keep Mystara from getting too stale. His many hobbies include ninth-dimensional chess, annoying his wife Titania, having fantastic make-up sex with his wife Titania, setting in place schemes that take centuries to unfold, and venturing out into the multiverse to antagonize his long-standing foe, the elven god Corellian Lorathian. So what drives the most powerful Archfey in Mystara? Well, I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to pay the ferryman. For starters, for those not familiar with my older videos, or Irish folklore in general, when you hear me pronounce Oberon or other Fey as she, the word is S-I-D-H-E. It's spelled Sid-he, but pronounced she. Just because us Irish like to jack with the English, and they can't steal our words if they can't pronounce them correctly. But that is always a point of confusion, so I'm clearing that up before I start. Oberon was, of course, taken directly from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night Dream, where he was playing an elaborate joke on his wife Titania with the help of his aide, sidekick, and partner in crime, Robin Goodfellow. Long story short, though nowhere near as long as Hamlet, Oberon and Titania have a lot of fun at the expense of some mortals, everybody lives, and the king and queen of the Fae go off to have some smoking hot fairy sex. All three of these characters were lifted directly, among others, and incorporated into Tall Tales of the Wee Folk. This explains the background of the Fae races and their interaction with the Immortals. But that created a continuity problem, as the Fae were supposed to be at least on par with the Immortals, but the rules didn't match the background. The Fae were little I immortal, unable to truly die, but possessing physical bodies that could be damaged, resulting in them regenerating back in their pocket dimension before returning to full health. They were incapable of breeding, so there were no half-Fae. They weren't even true humanoids. They only adopted their form to live in the mortal world. Rules-wise, they capped out at 36 like other races, and while that was impressive, it was nowhere on par with the Immortals. Cue the creation of the Archfey, with Oberon as their leader. The Good Kingdom, or the Dimension of the Fairy, was a slice of the ethereal plane carved off when the Old Ones erected the Great Barrier to stop the gods from destroying Mystara and similar lands. Oberon was already a powerful Fey creature even then, and he bargained with the Old Ones to take him and his followers into the Great Barrier in exchange for using their inherent magic to bolster the creation of the Great Barrier. This was done in the presence of the vindictive elven god, Corellian Lorathian, who was taking Fey creatures and shaping them into elves to fight in his war. When Lorathian discovered that Oberon and all of his charges were suddenly safe on the other side of the barrier, forever cut off from the greedy warmongering god, Oberon cemented his legend by taunting a greater god and walking away unscathed. This single act allowed him to become the first of the Archfey, his formidable powers further increased by the power of his own legends. Oberon began shaping the Good Kingdom into his own liking. He needed a place for the goodly folk to call home, away from the short-lived mortals and the still young immortals. Oberon began his obsession with politics, both mortal and divine. He discovered he couldn't create life like the immortals could, but he could alter their form, shape the races to his own amusement. He changed certain centaurs into the Cheval, certain elk into the Actaeons, and tweaked the appearance of the she to resemble a hybrid of elf and human. Because of his antics in slightly altering races for his own amusement, many people believe elves are related to the Fae, though in reality the two races only have a slight resemblance in common. Oberon then did something highly unusual among the Fae. He took another she as his wife. Titania was already an Archfey, and as much as Oberon was obsessed with politics, she was obsessed with relationships. What better way to experience politics than with a family? The two were married in a lavish spectacle in the Good Kingdom, where every Fey and Sylvan creature was expected to attend, and more than a few powerful mortals, and even a handful of outer planar friends of the bride and groom. The union proved to increase the wonder of both Oberon and Titania, as their spats and their reconciliations have become the stuff of legend. They might feud for years, but they will always return to each other's arms, no matter how tumultuous their relationship became. An attack on one, no matter what their perceived relationship is like, will always bring down the wrath of the other. Oberon hunted down a demon lord who attempted to kidnap Titania, and after defeating the creature without getting a drop of its blood on him, he gave it to Rawhead and Bloody Bones with the instructions to take their sweet time. When Oberon was double-crossed by a dark elf queen who wanted to chop him up for spell components, Titania responded by unleashing half a dozen F5 tornadoes inside of a subterranean city. Their relationship might have its ups and downs, but it is also never-ending. Oberon created his She-Court by selecting the most powerful, useful, and more importantly, entertaining Archfey available. His good friend Robin Goodfellow was the second Archfey chosen after Titania. Oberon uses him as a spy, agent, and drinking buddy on a regular basis. He surprised many by asking the powerful Mob, Queen of Night, and Gwynneth to join his court. Mob had access to the dreams of the mortals and also had strong ties to the demiplane of Nightmare. Gwyn-ap-Nuth guarded Anwen, the shadowy portion of the spirit world that separated the good kingdom from the mortal realms. He was a ridiculously powerful warrior, but like Mob, had no interest in ruling over all the Fae. Every Archfey added to King Oberon's power as he could use their powers as his own. He was not the strongest of the Fae by any measure, but he was also the most clever and could keep his entire entourage busy with all sorts of distractions. Despite all of his machinations among his fellow Archfey, Oberon is frequently found in the mortal world. While immortals need the worship of mortals, Archfey need their inspiration. Oberon holds court in a clearing located in the Dreamland Good Magic spot in Alfheim. Here he talks not just with Fae creatures, but sylvan and even mortal creatures that dare approach. His court appears once a month in the Dreamland, and while time means nothing in the Good Kingdom, Oberon still manages to plan all of his incursions into the mortal world perfectly. Here, deals are struck with mortal petitioners, requests for aid are heard, and Oberon's agents set into the mortal world to do his bidding. Mortals looking to become warlocks must appear during these visitations, but only at great risk. While his power in the mortal realms are greatly weakened, he is still a formidable creature. Oberon is known and feared in the mortal courts, as he makes it a point to be known by the various rulers. He has no official nation, there is no standing army of the Sidhe, and the Fae don't exactly trade with their neighbors. What they do offer is the ability to alter a nation's luck. Crops grow just a little bit more. Miners discover richer veins of gold. The roads become safer, monsters become rarer, and disasters only happen to other nations. The Archfey warp reality to help those that they deem their friends, though the cost is often unpredictable. Oberon has no need of coin or protection, but learning a new magic or discovering a mystery will often be enough to satisfy the Ardri. He is eternal, but his sense of wonder has not wavered in all his long years. When he gets bored, Oberon will often go adventuring in the mortal world without warning. He often brings Robin Goodfellow along with him as a sidekick. Other Archfey have been known to accompany him, including his bodyguard Bregbettel, Crethyleth, the Queen of Love and Beauty, and occasionally Ariel, his messenger. When he's feeling really adventurous, he will even take Titania with him. Though normally he just sneaks out without telling her, because this irritates her and that amuses him. His companions represent the more adventurous Fae, except for Ariel, who is there to keep an eye on Oberon and also to let him know if he's needed for an actual emergency. He has been known to crash formal parties. The Darrican Grand Masquerade is a favorite of his, though no one ever recognizes him for obvious reasons. He has antagonized Emperor Thin-Call by dancing with the Empress without asking. He once tried to become the king and queen of Irindi at the same time through the use of illusion magic, though he gracefully bowed out when his trickery was discovered. His actions are never malicious, but they can infuriate the mortal rulers because of his love of deception. Oberon is well known in the multiverse, possibly the most famous Mystaran resident. He is known by the various fairy queens outside the Great Barrier and is reviled by many of them. He is very familiar with the Feywild, and his visits frequently stir up trouble. Due to his time isolated inside the Great Barrier, his power grew dramatically, putting him on equal terms with greater gods, something that he is loath to talk about, but more than happy to demonstrate if pressed. On planes outside the Prime, he is in full control of his powers without having them reduced. He is one of the few male leaders of the fairies, as queens rule the Feywild with an iron grip normally. He will appear and demand an audience, as is his right as an Archfey. There he will discuss events and make convoluted deals with the queens before returning to the Good Kingdom. Only much later do the queens discover how the seemingly fair agreement was incredibly lopsided in Oberon's favor. His reputation for inhuman cunning is well deserved. If Oberon had a true rival, it would be the elven god Corellian Lorathian. He was the cause of Oberon's disgust towards the gods, and Lorathian's own actions directly caused Oberon to side with the Old Ones and the Immortals during the Dawn War. The hatred these two have toward each other is palpable. To Lorathian, Oberon was an upstart lesser creature who denied the gods the souls that were rightfully theirs. Oberon views Lorathian as an egotistical, lying, hypocritical bigot who expects worship without earning it from his followers. He further infuriates Lorathian by constantly comparing him unfavorably to Mystaran immortals of elven origin, hinting that they earned their divinity rather than just having it handed to them. The feud between them is thousands of years old at the least, and neither of them have any intention of ending it. Ironically, the pair are incapable of harming each other physically, so they have to thwart each other's plans through proxies. Embarrassing the first of the Seldarine is a guaranteed way to earn quick favor from the Ardri of the Sidhe court. Oberon is formidable in both combat and with spells. He's not the most powerful in either area. Titania's magical ability dwarfs that of her husband's. Gwyn-ap-Nuth and Bregbettel are known to be far superior warriors than Oberon. But what he does possess in numbers greater than any other creature known is favors. His political dealings have earned him innumerable allies, some unaware of whom they promised their service to. He He has access to the legions of the hells, angelic hosts, numerous immortals, the entire military force of several nations. He has access to the wealth of entire merchant houses, and of course every archfey in his court. He can call in a favor from one petitioner to aid another petitioner, and never have the two know about each other. Any attempt to harm him will be intercepted by various creatures sworn to protect him with their lives. His power reaches across the multiverse, though knowledge of this doesn't. The Sidhe have a tenuous relationship with the immortals, and Oberon is no exception. His power is equal to the hierarchs, but their powers don't overlap. Where the immortals can create entire worlds with a thought, the archfey can easily modify the creatures that thrive on those worlds. The immortals can do this, but it greatly strains their abilities to perform the same task. This makes for a tense symbiotic relationship, where the archfey are looking to populate worlds for the inspiration that mortals give them. The immortals need those followers to further their seer's powers. The two groups need each other, and they're both loath to admit that. Oberon is mortal enemies with the immortals of entropy, who only exist to destroy life. He's on neutral terms with Cronus and Terra, as those are too stodgy for his tastes. He gets along famously with Odin, one of the few creatures that Oberon considers an equal. His one rival is Ixion, who detests Oberon's constant scheming. The two did make a peace of sorts when they had to deal with an extraplanar threat to Mystara, and while they can't stand each other's methods, they do respect each other because of their shared goals. Oberon is unique among the power players of the multiverse. He is probably the most likely you will meet face to face without him wanting anything from you except for a good time. He has no worshippers. He doesn't demand anything from mortals that they don't willingly offer. What he does do is make deals and friends. It's very possible that the player characters can encounter him and either get swept in his adventures or be given a boon in exchange for a future favor to be performed later. Next up on Welcome to Mystara is the good, the bad, and the ugly magic spots. These are the locations inside of Alfheim where magical abilities are mysteriously increased or monsters are known to spawn at random. So which one gets the better ratings on Google Maps? Stay tuned and find out. But until then, keep sucking it, Larathian.